McPherson Church of the Brethren. If you're watching us on Channel 13 or online, this is our special yearly, once-a-year service Sunday. And so things are a little different this morning, a little more laid back, a little more oriented towards not working on just making sure that our building is beautiful and we're being good stewards of the property, but that we prepare for the upcoming season that's going to have many, many people coming and going throughout. So why don't we stand and wrestle with this question? What do you appreciate about your family? So find someone, talk to someone you haven't talked to. It's a little easier this morning because we are not as many, but find someone and wrestle with the question, what do you appreciate about your family? On behalf of Faith Formation, I want to thank you for getting up earlier than normal for some of you. I know 9 o'clock for college students is a little too much to ask. We thank you for being here and taking a Sunday to truly help the church family move forward with the new calendar year. This summer, we had a group of middle school students go to Cincinnati, Ohio as part of a service project week. I'm not going to call her out, but if you want to hear about her experience, Malia had a chance to spend 4 days in Cincinnati with Gray Robinson and a couple others, and Sarah Olamenik was their sponsor. And so I invite you to ask them about what service means to them. For those of us deeply rooted in the Church of the Brethren tradition, service is a core identity, a core value of what it means to be a person of faith. And so it's fitting that we take one day out of the whole year and work together to continue making our church family more beautiful, more whole. Many of us spend time at Camp Colorado, Camp Mount Herman, working on those camps, getting them ready. Many go to disaster relief projects to help communities recover. Service is part of our narrative, it's part of our language. And so I thank you again for being here. Are there any other announcements or guests to introduce on this beautiful day? Dustin will run around with the microphone. Well, if there are none, I have one, and that is middle school senior hires, get ready. Wednesday, August 22nd, we kick off, so parents, we'll have a parent meeting that night, so get ready for the new year. It's right upon us. So let us continue as we move closer and deeper into worship. Yeah, please rise for our opening song. Please join me in the gathering words. You call us to service, to be You call us to service and You call us to service. To open our ears not only to the chattering of this coming week, but to the searching, fears, and questioning of all whom we meet. You call us to service. To open our hands not only to those with whom we choose to share our lives, but in welcome, love, and fellowship to all whom we encounter. You call us to service. You call us to service. To be your eyes and ears, hands and voice in this world. Please be seated. There are so many things in our world today calling for our attention, calling for our time, calling for our passions, and calling for our dollars. So why the church? Why continue to support an institution that some believe really is a dying institution? Well, because your time, your passion, and your dollars empower us to continue being the hands and feet of Jesus. Your commitment to us as a community of faith, allows us to write a story to the world that the church is very much alive. It is vibrant, it is powerful, and it is a different story than the one that some hear about Christianity today. Your support of who we are as a community allows us to change the story. Will you please come forward and accept our gifts? pray with me. That'll work. I don't leave him up there. Please pray with me. Loving God, we thank you. We thank you for a space that allows us to come as we are and to give ourselves to you and to the growing ministries of your church and to your community. We ask, oh God, that you use our gifts to continue to open doors for us to be more loving, more welcoming, more Christ-like to our neighbors. Use them to build your kingdom here and now. Amen. Our scripture this morning is one simple verse from 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. Like good stewards of the manifold grace of God, serve one another with whatever gift each of you has received. Now this should be, will you join me in the prayer? Please pray with me. God, we know your love, and daily we experience your care and blessings. You invite us to extend that love to the world around us, to care for others as deeply as we care for ourselves. Your grace reaches to all. You call us to live as your people, working together with one heart and mind. Strengthen us to live in a manner reflective of you, offering our lives in service, where the last are first and the first are last, and there is grace enough for all. God, in your mercy and grace, hear our prayer. Amen. Hey, beautiful. You okay? Good morning. I know there's one more. Are you coming?
Slow.
That's all right. That's all right. We all move at different paces. Good morning. This morning, I'm going to read from a book called Savannah Spider, Super Scientist Goes to School. This was written by somebody in our community of faith, our church family. A member of our church wrote this. Do you guys know who that was? Dustin. You guys wave at Dustin? Say hi to Dustin. He wrote this book for a lot of reasons. One, because he's incredibly talented. But two, because he wants young people like you to be inspired and motivated to think about the world through the lens of a scientist, but also to help teach us that sometimes those eight-legged critters that some of us think are demons in disguise are really important parts of our environment and essential to the balance of the world. And so, he wrote this book for you and for me, because I need to know that spiders aren't going to harm me and spin me in their web. Okay?
Yeah, like you almost got in the
Really? You're going there? All right. But here's another piece of Dustin's heart. These books are going to be available to sell. There's some of them that he's going to have available. And 20% of the sales of his book, right, that many people would say, hey, use that to kind of go towards your next book or some other project. Do you know what he's going to do with 20% of the book sales? He's going to donate them to a project called New Community Project, specifically in Ecuador. And there's a couple of projects he might speak about later. So he's going to use money that he could go into his own pocket to help further and help other people. Do you think that's a fitting way to be a person of service? I think it's amazing, don't you? So if you don't have his book, I recommend you get it, and maybe he might even sign it for you. And then you have like this awesome, cool author signature signed book that's going to be worth millions someday. All right, chapter 1, first day of school. Buzz! Savannah's spider jumped out of her web hammock so quickly that she bumped into the microscope beside her bed and knocked over a bowl that held this crazy, weird bug she found in her backyard yesterday. She rubbed all 8 of her eyes to see if she could find it crawling across the floor, but it was too late. She would have to wait to find her specimen and figure out exactly what it was another time, because today was a big day. Hurry downstairs for breakfast. I made your favorite, a fabulous fly smoothie. That sounds good, doesn't it? No. A fly smoothie?
No.
Her mom shouted from the kitchen.
Is it a smoothie that flies?
No, it's a fly that's been ground up so you can drink it. Sitting at the table, sipping her, hey, really? Can you relax? There you go. Savannah tapped her feet, all 8 of them, to her favorite song. Before long, her dad joined in across the table singing, "Out came the sun and dried up all the rain." The whole family joined together for their favorite part. Then the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout. Again, that's right. Savannah, her dad said with a smile, "I can't believe my cute little spiderling is old enough to be in school. Let's try to avoid doing any experiments on your first day. Don't start anything on fire, okay, my little scientist?" Savannah nodded. "Some days I'm surprised our house is still standing after this summer," her dad said, grinning at her. "Most importantly, though, make sure to be good. Have fun and learn a lot. Now hurry upstairs and put your shoes on so you won't be late." Savannah scrambled to her closet to find her favorite outfit, her lab coat, and her favorite 4 pairs of shoes. To her surprise, all of her shoelaces were gone. "Mom!" Savannah screamed. "All of my silk shoelaces are missing from my shoes." She ran across the hall to find her older brother, Woody. "Do you know what happened to my shoelaces?" "Sorry, Savannah. We were out of flies last night, and I was really hungry for a snack." "Ah! You can't be serious. Now what am I going to wear my first day of school?" Savannah cried. "Now, Woody," their mother said calmly, "I know how your father and I encourage recycling, but that doesn't mean eating your sister's shoelaces." Would you eat your sister's shoelaces?
No.
Would you? No? All
She
right.
doesn't have a sister.
Ollie. "Don't worry, Savannah. I can spin some new laces in no time." As soon as Savannah's laces were made and tied, she got up and raced out the door. "Not so fast, miss. Show me what's in your lab coat pockets," Mom yelled. Savannah rolled her eyes, turned around, and dumped out the contents of her pockets. A magnifying glass, a collection jar full of slime mold, a pair of tweezers, a pad of paper, a pen, and a pair of beetle grubs. Does that sound good? Does that sound like a nice lunch to you? "Let's leave the living things at home today. Not everyone is as fond of slime molds and grubs as you are," Mom explained. By the time Savannah finally got out the door, she looked down the street to see her bus driving away. Oh no, now I'll never get to school on time. The thought of being late to her first day of school sent shivers down the hairs of her legs. Her school was 10 blocks away. She had to hurry. Just as she began to run down the street toward her school, a big gust of wind came from behind and almost pushed her over. Of course, Savannah thought, my only chance of getting to school on time is by flying. She's flying. Savannah let out a long line of silk into the wind. In no time, she was picked up off the ground like a balloon and headed toward her school. Up, up, and away, she giggled. Savannah was so excited that she didn't realize how fast she was going. She should have remembered what her dad taught her as a little spiderling. Flying with the wind is fast and fun, but it's kind of hard to control. Before she knew it, Savannah was past the school and needed to backtrack. We're only going to read chapter 1 today. Okay, so if you want to read more or learn more about Savannah's wonderful experiments and experiences and adventures in school, either have your parents buy a book, or if you have the book, have them read it to you. How many of you are getting ready to start school this week? Like, first day of school is coming up. You guys going to have like lab coats and science stuff to do experiments? Maybe some grubs in your pockets? Well, go with the same mentality. They'll go ready to learn and to be good students and good citizens, okay? Thank you. Have a great week. See you guys next week. Go. I got to introduce Dustin. So our speaker this morning, many of you know. Some of you may play tennis with him. Some of you may work with him at McPherson College. Some of you may live with him or have run with him or know him in some other capacity. My good, dear friend Dustin Wilgers will be bringing the message this morning. And I guess I should have known that God had something in store when Dustin and Autumn were one of the first people that Kendra and I met on our return to McPherson. They may not remember the experience, but I won't forget it. Kendra started working at Wesley, and her boss at the time happened to have been someone that Dustin is closely related to. Dustin's father was one of Kendra's bosses. And we were walking over to the college for that Sunday where alumni and friends all gather, and that's when we met them. Right there outside Friendship, and we're talking and we get to know each other, and we realize there's this connection. And we also realize that Autumn and Kendra would be really good friends right away because they have so much in common, and Dustin and I would connect. He has helped me learn to appreciate spiders, not necessarily love them or adore them. I'm hoping to get there someday, but I appreciate them more than ever. But I appreciate his friendship, his wisdom, his brilliance, and his heart. And I am thankful that he's going to bring a message this morning about Ecuador and his work with New Community Project and David Ratcliffe. And so it is an honor and a privilege and a blessing that I introduce Dr. Dustin Wilgers.
All right, thank you for letting me share this space with you and letting me share probably the top non-family related experiences of my life. It's going to be hard to wrap up 7 days of experiences in the next 10 or so minutes. I'll try. I can't guarantee I'll get it done in that much time, but I'll see what I can do. I had to try and boil down 850 pictures into something that would fit into this amount of time. So I'm a little out of my element here, so if you could help me out, I'm kind of used to being in front of a classroom, so if some of you could take a pen out and act like you're taking notes. If some of you could put your cell phone and try to hide like you're texting underneath the pew. And if a few more of you would just take a nap, that would make me feel a little more comfortable like I'm used to. So that would be great. It's every Sunday. I'll clock it about 8 minutes or so and people will be snoozing. Okay, so I had an opportunity to develop a class that took people to Ecuador. And if you can go ahead and start my slide show and advance one more time. So it all started with an organization that I quickly became acquainted with when I got to McPherson College. the New Community Project. I started at McPherson College. This will be my 8th year coming up. And in year 1, I was contacted and asked to see if David Radcliffe, go ahead and click again, could come and speak to my environmental science class. And given his passions and given the goals of the New Community Project, which is a small, if you look at their website, they're a small organization with a big goal to change the world. Okay, their logo has the world, sorry, go back, the world, they have their logo with the world flipped upside down. They are focused on social and environmental justice. And when I had David Radcliffe come and speak to my class, I realized that this was a person that not only talked the talk, but walk the walk. And if you have had any experience meeting up with David Radcliffe, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's come to my class every year since then, sometimes multiple years, and he tries to promote a learning tour. And his learning tours are not, he stresses that they're not just a vacation, but they are an immersive experience with a goal to try and teach the people that go on them something about the area that they're going to, whether it's social issues or environmental issues. And by the time you're done with this immersive experience, you're transformed, right? And so my goal, as soon as I started hearing about these 7 years ago, was to try and go on one myself, and even better yet, take a class there. And I had the opportunity to do that this last May. So go ahead and advance. We went to Ecuador. If you don't know where Ecuador is, it's in South America on the west coast. It's a small little country right there. And the region we visited when we were there is in the northeast corner to the east of the Andes Mountains right there. We were in the Amazon rainforest and trekked back there. Our goal for this was to understand the impacts of globalization on indigenous cultures, on social issues, on environmental issues, dealing with a place way far away. It's really easy for us to see the impacts of our lifestyle and globalization all around us when you go out there and you see litter all over the place. My favorite example of the impacts of kind of our lifestyle, if you ever drive west to Denver and you start seeing the Rocky Mountains and you're driving to Denver and you see the haze and the smog that's set up right up there, always a constant reminder for me of the impacts of our lifestyle. But it's sometimes hard because of the disconnect to see the impacts of what we do and what we choose to do on an everyday basis all the way across the planet in places like Ecuador. And our goal was to explore the impacts of one important thing, and an important part of our society right today is oil. Go ahead and, sorry, this is a picture of a lake. So Ecuador is named after its place on the globe. It's on the equator. And this is a picture of a lake in the haze that's literally sitting on the equator that we were traveling around by boat, right? Go ahead and go to the next one. So Ecuador is loaded with oil. It's an important export for them economically, but it is doing devastating things to their environment and to their culture. They export about 400,000 barrels per day of oil, 200,000 of which come to the U.S. So we are a very important part of that oil coming out of there. They're drilling and pulling oil out of that country and sending it our way to support our lifestyle. And it's disrupting what they do, right? And so what we were hoping to do is learn a little bit about how it affects the ecology and the environment and how it affects society in general. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So it didn't take long for me to see this down in that country. In order to get back into the Amazon rainforest, we landed in Quito, which is up high in the Andes Mountains, and we had to drive up over the top of the peak and then down into the Amazon Valley and the Amazon Basin. And that took about an 8-hour bus ride. And as we were going there along this roadway, we see the pipeline. And sometimes this pipeline will be right next to the road, right in front of our face. And sometimes it would disappear, and I'd be thankful that it disappeared, and I could enjoy the scenery. And then it didn't take about 2 minutes, and that pipeline would come right back. And it was a constant reminder for me of what we do here, right? That pipeline, if they didn't have somewhere to export that oil to, that pipeline might not be there. And it might not be disrupting the pristine part of this. It was nice to see that many of the people there are vehemently against the pipeline. You can see on the pipeline right here, it says, "I fight for the life in the Amazon." And there are a variety of other graffitis along that I also have pictures of that say like anti-Chevron and other places like that, showing that people there aren't exactly open to accepting oil company money that disrupt their life. Go ahead and go forward again. We were out in the Amazon for 5 days, separated from society, not seeing really another human besides the people in our group and the cultures that we visited for 5 days. Came off the river, and this is the first thing I saw. On the bridge that we came out of, there was the pipeline again. And here it was a slap in the face, like here we'd kind of been separated and tried to get away from this to understand the cultures and the environment and see these beautiful things. And then we got back close to society again, and here was this pipeline, kind of a constant reminder for me. Go ahead. We drove about 5 minutes down the road, and there was a refinery with all of the pristine rainforest cleared in order for that refinery to be there. Right? And so you go from being in jungle so dense that you can hardly walk through it to something like this with roadways and cleared away areas and with burning pipes. You can see the pipes sticking up, and then there's a flame sticking out of it. It's kind of a slap in the face a little bit where we see just exactly what we're doing. Go ahead and go forward. So, in terms of biodiversity, the place that we visited is the most biodiverse place on the planet. Terrestrially, there are roughly, I think, 600 bird species, 150 amphibians, 1,100 tree species, and over 100,000 insects, just in the small little pocket of the rainforest that we visited up in that northeastern section of Ecuador. There's a lot of stuff going on. And it didn't take long. Go ahead and advance forward. It didn't take long to realize why. It is extremely wet, by far the wettest place I've ever been. It rains nonstop there. There are waterfalls. You can see in the picture on the left, there are actually 3 waterfalls in that picture leading down into that river. It's so wet there that the trees actually create their own rain. So clouds are forming inside the canopy of the trees, and then the clouds get so dense that it drops rain right back on you. So it's almost impossible to stay dry. And there's water coming down. So go ahead and go forward. This is a video. You can actually play the video. This is our first experience with a waterfall up close. If you can see kind of the power of how much water is coming down. And it's so windy down. You can see that was kind of an energizing experience to be able to be down there and feel the water and the power that come down from all of that rain, right? And this was just the start of the experience. We went down into the Amazon basin. Go ahead and go forward. Once we got into the area, we traveled mostly by boat or by foot. Okay, you can see we're actually raining at the time we got on that boat. And we were traveling by boat or by foot for 5 straight days. Didn't see much of anybody everything we did was traveling and visiting different cultures. Go ahead and go to the next one. Here's another. This is one of the streams that we go back to one of the communities. And go to the next one, I'll show you. This is kind of how we trekked back through. I didn't wear my rubber rain boots today. I thought about it, but I also wanted to try and be comfortable a little bit while we were doing our service projects afterwards. But in some cases, like you see on the right, the rubber rain boots didn't even help us because the water was over our knees as we were trying to trek through the rainforest. So we had people along with us with machetes that actually cleared trail for us as we walked through and make sure and cleared it away. It was really easy to see how diverse this was. When you look around at just walking through the jungle, you don't see very many of the same types of trees. Like, trees are everywhere, but it's not the same kind of tree. If you go walk around in a forest, or you go walk around in Maxwell Wildlife Refuge, when you're walking there, you actually see many of the same species of trees. But when you walk in Ecuador, you don't see the same kind of tree over and over and over again. In fact, I think they estimate in about 100 acres of the Ecuador rainforest, you have as many or more tree species than all of the United States. And that's how diverse this place is. Go ahead and go to the next one. One of my favorite places and one of my favorite trees is the ceiba tree. Here's me. This is in between the buttress roots. So they have a very different root system there. In order to stay upright, they send out prop roots. And those roots on the left and the right of me are about 18 feet high. And that's how this gigantic tree that's about 300 feet tall stands. This tree is important ecologically because it serves as a habitat for many of the different animals, other plants that live up there, but it's also culturally important. The shamans that we would go, they believe that the protector of the forest, like the spirit, the protector of the forest, lives inside these trees. So much that when we followed the shamans to this, the shamans would say, just wait here. Because in some cases, if you are here to harm the forest, that they believe that the spirits would protect it. And so they are there, and they went up and they would put their hand on the tree, and they would knock on the tree, and they would tell them that the people that follow me are here for good. They're not here to harm you. They're my friends, right? Don't harm them, please. And then after that, they would allow us to come, and we would sit around that tree and we would talk about it and talk about its importance. Go ahead and go to the next one. This is from the top of one of those ceiba trees, and I just wanted to show you a time-lapse footage. So we did this at sunset. And as the sun goes down, it gets a little bit cooler. It's kind of always about 80 degrees there, but it gets a little bit cooler. Go to the next slide. This is the same area, and you can start to see as it gets cooler, you can start to see small, like smoke, like fog appearing. And go to the next one. Within about 30 minutes, you can see that actually the clouds were forming like right in front of your face, right at eye level. And that's just how wet it is. You give a different perspective when you're 200 feet off the ground in the top of a tree and you actually see the clouds forming around you. I saw a lot of different animals and plants. Go ahead and go to the next one. So here's some fungus. Right? I saw the top right picture I know is a moth, but that wasn't the interesting part of that picture. It's actually a fungus growing out of the moth, and it's well known as a zombie fungus because when it infects whatever insect, it takes over their brain and it causes them to climb up the tree until they die, and then the fungus erupts out of it and it disperses, right? And so seeing a zombie fungus for the first time was probably one of the highlights. I know it's weird, but it was one of the highlights. Go ahead and go forward. One of my favorite things, obviously, down there was seeing some of the arachnids. The diversity struck me, but also the size. Nearly every single one of the arachnids in those pictures were bigger around than my hand. I could have made 30 slides of just these because we went out on night hikes a lot, and I was able to interact with many of these and see them right up close and personal. Go ahead and go forward. Here's some of the insects. We see some of the leaf hoppers and the camouflage popped out. Some moths, a gypsy moth, I think, on the bottom left. The cricket on the bottom, it's called a lobster cricket, and the picture doesn't do it justice. But again, what really struck me when I was there was the size of these things. The lobster cricket was longer than my hand. On the far right, we don't need to do the picture or the video here, but you can see the little specks of leaves. I got to see the world's first farmer. They're leafcutter ants, and they are farming leaves from the canopy, and they pick those leaves and then they drag them underground and they grow a fungus, and they eat the fungus that they grow. So they were literally the planet's first farmers. Go ahead and go forward. Oh, and there you can see them moving. I saw a few mammals. I don't have good pictures of mammals because many times they were far enough away we couldn't get good pictures, but we saw sloths and monkeys. On the top right, we saw pink dolphins traveling in the aquatic river system. And then capybaras. Go forward. One of the most memorable things that I remember, though, is the cultures, the people that we met there. Ecuador is home to a number of different indigenous tribes. Each of them have their own language. Each of them have their own culture and their own practices. And we got to meet up with, I think, 5 different cultures in that top northeastern section. Go ahead and go forward. They live a relatively simple life. And what struck me about their simple lives was how happy they were. Many of them didn't have electricity. Some of them had electricity from solar panels, and that was it. Just one single solar panel, and all they used that solar panel was to do just a few of the crafts that they could do at night without light, so that they could sell some of these crafts and make just a little bit of money for soap and spices, and that was really about all they needed. They were incredibly happy, they were incredibly welcoming, they were just a beautiful people. Go ahead and go forward. We tracked through some of their practices about how they make bread. This was, we actually went from beginning all the way to the end and making bread out of this yucca plant that looks like a potato. We actually harvested the tubers, ground them, and baked them on their bakeware right there, and then we ate like tortillas for lunch. Very simple and very happy, right? Go ahead, go forward. We saw some of their crops and how they sustainably made a living through crops like chocolate on the top left, coconut and pineapple on the bottom left, bananas in the middle, oranges on the right, and go ahead and go forward. And my particular favorite, coffee. I was really happy to see coffee down there and see where it's actually grown. It's a lot of fun to see those. I actually ate a coffee berry without the roasting part. They're actually really, really sweet and really delicious without having roasted them. Go ahead and go forward. The most impactful thing was talking with the shamans. The shamans are the equivalent of their medicine man. They have inspected and learned from the forest. The rainforest is literally their medicine chest. It's ours too, but it is more directly theirs. They have, so these are 3 of the shamans. So these people range, I think on the far right, he estimates he's somewhere between 90 and 100 years old. The one in the middle is, I think, 90 years old, and the one on the left is about 65. But they don't really know their ages because they weren't issued birth certificates. They just kind of, when they got an ID, I think it was 30 years ago, the people at the government office looked at them and said, "You look about this age. Here's your birth year," right? But they're estimating that they're somewhere, oftentimes between 80 and 100 years old. A lot of knowledge. They shared some of their rituals. Go ahead and go forward. Some of their rituals and the things that they do around their society and their culture. Things like painting for protection. So before you could go out in the forest to protect you from everything around you, they would paint you. They would do, on the top right is he has leaves that he's shaking over you, and he's trying to rid you of evil spirits, right? And it's so authentic, and it was so moving to be able to experience something like that you kind of felt them trying to share a little piece of them with you. Go ahead and go forward. This is the medicine chest. So they had a remedy for almost every ailment that you can think of. Things from cough to flu to eye issues, to runny nose. You can see the guy in the middle, he's like essentially putting garlic up his nose to clear out his sinuses. And it worked very well. He was very clear for the rest of the day. And they even had remedies for and medicine for birth control and many other things that we could ever think of. You go out and you pick a leaf or you peel some bark off and you're done, right? Now, the sad thing, and this is where it kind of hit home with the oil, and this is where I'm going to try and end a little bit, is when oil industries came in there, they talked about how they have jobs for the younger generations, and that jobs come with money and an hourly wage, and that some of the younger generations there were enticed. They like to see that constant stream of income, and so they're taking jobs from the oil industry, and they're not interested in many of the jobs like shamanism that have been a part of their culture for such a long period of time. And so here we have shamans that are 80 to 100 years old that are right at the end of their life. They have nobody to pass on all of that information to. And so when they die, all of that understanding of what goes on in their part of the rainforest and how to use that disappears, because many of the people and many of the younger generation seeing a chance to make some money from the oil industry changes them a little bit. Go ahead and go forward. This was probably one of the oddest places that we took. This is the Playas de Cuyabeno. And this was a community that was given to them from the oil industry in payment for them taking some of their land, actually illegally. And so they built this community for them out of concrete, and they have electricity, but they had a constant generator, and you had a constant hum in the background that kind of disrupted all of the natural sounds. But the people there were different. They were completely... They weren't as welcoming. They weren't as warm. They kind of went about their normal little small lifestyles. They didn't really care about who was there and sharing anything with them. It was about the coldest place we went, but it was the most technologically advanced place that we experienced. So what the new community project did, and this is the last thing I want to share. They're trying to share and do small grant programs with people down there to try and prevent things like this from happening and prevent people from trying to take money from oil and sell some of their lands. And two of the things that the new community project supported, they are sending money down there to a community that is developing sustainable biodegradable soaps that they can sell to just make enough to do what they need to do. And another one to develop a ecotourism lodge, much like the one we stayed down there, bringing people, teaching them about what we learned about. And by taking money from there, it prevents them from taking money from the oil companies. And so New Community Project is going down there and making partnerships with people down there. So I got back completely transformed. I just had a couple takeaways. One is it doesn't take much to be happy. It doesn't take much to lead a happy life, to be, and part of that is serving others, right? And everything we do impacts somebody else, right? Today we're going to do something positive that's going to impact other people in a positive way. But in other cases, sometimes what we do, we don't realize because we're a little bit disconnected from the impacts. But everything we do impacts somebody else. So thank you for letting me share. I appreciate you taking the time and listening, and no one fell asleep. So thank you.
For our sending song. have 3 projects down on the table in the narthex for you to look at and to sort of find your passion or where you think your gifts might lie or what you might be interested in doing. John and Andrew will sort of do the properties. Are you guys kind of right? Okay. If you want to have information, look at them. I'm going to call Laura out because one of the projects I put on was looking at the Kingdom Kids room. And so you might ask Laura if she needs help there. I have the youth team, the junior high and senior high rooms also on that list. Come see me. The other one is Kendra, Autumn, and Judy are downstairs doing the snacks, but also getting the kitchen ready, and there's some crafts. Now, that's the only 3 that I had that I was sort of bringing together, but I just thought of one. I'm talking to Dustin. For those that may not know, if you don't get the prayer chain, then this is new news to you. Thursday, I think, Deb Wagner made a quick trip to Kansas City to have a liver and a kidney transplant. I don't have an update. I'm sorry. I wish I did. But in the community room where the leadership team meets, I'm going to find a bunch of paper and some pens and crayons and markers. I'm going to ask us to do a bunch of get well cards for the Wagners. My hope is to make a trip up to Kansas City this week to take that stuff to them. Chris and Catherine are still out of town, and so make as many as you want, and you can come and go with the different projects. Don't feel like you just have to stay at one. If you want to move on to something else, go do it. That's why we're here, is to kind of feel where our passion lies and where we want to give back to our community of faith and help our church continue to minister to the wider community. Go in love, go in peace. Amen. All right.